All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Thanks everyone for being here at this September 3rd edition of the Werewolf Technical Steering Committee meeting. Um, got a few things on the agenda, mostly around, releases and release management, though that's not everything. Uh, but before we get started, anything that we need to add to this agenda as you see it here on the screen? Hearing nothing, we'll go ahead and get started with our first thing. Rose, how are you feeling about the WUG?
I'm loving the WUG, man. It is really, I think, perfect timing, right? People are like, oh, yeah, that, I want to go to that. I want to be a part of that. So it's really cool and very exciting. I'll tell you right now, I don't even think I've invited everyone right here. We already have 33 guests.
Awesome.
So I liked your suggestion of just like maybe taking the invite list from here and just boop, adding it to the other one. What do you think?
No objection.
Yeah, I think it's time. It's time for that. I was kind of like holding out for like the engagement. You know what I mean? Because you know how those things are. The more somebody posts, the more people see it. So so far so good. It's all very exciting. I don't have anyone, so I've been reaching out just kind of individually to people, being like, hey, I see that you're doing some cool stuff. Like, would you like to come to the WUG? And I haven't gotten any takers just yet on being the 5-10 minute presenter. So I appreciate you, Jonathan, saying that you would do it if we didn't get anybody. And maybe, I don't know like the appropriateness of this, but like maybe is it like bring it to the greater public and say, hey guys, we're having a like in the general or something like that, general channel.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable.
Cool. And I did get a response from somebody, I call them in the wild, right? Werewolf in the wild, someone out there doing werewolf stuff that maybe we don't know about. When I posted on social media, the did you know, about provisioning. So someone
Nice.
responded on I think it was X or one of those Blue Sky. So that was cool. It's good to get a little engagement. He's like, oh, we're doing this and this and this. I'm like, all right, well, keep me posted, man. We're happy to help.
Cool. It's scheduled for an hour, is that right?
Yeah.
And do you have an agenda for that aside from a hope for a 15-minute slot from an end user or me as a backup?
Yeah, so the agenda is actually posted in, I mean, it's just like a generic one that I grabbed off of like AI, like what is a WUG? What do we do? I mean, I'm very happy for your guys' input on like how we want our WUG to go and flow. But I did add it just to the invite. It's just in there, like I
Okay.
copy pasted, it's like welcome, project and community updates, and then the featured topic or demo or something that somebody talks about, open discussion, and then wrap up.
Okay. Yeah, I'm looking at that. You can't see it now, but yeah, I see it in the invite now, and I apologize for continuing to ask you things about it that are publicly available, but that's good to
No,
know.
all good.
Um,
I feel great when I have an answer.
um, who would you like to be doing like that first thing, what's new in werewolf stuff, like 10 minutes thing?
Yeah,
Do you have
I
do you have
mean,
someone collared for that yet?
I do not. I mean, I imagine it's one of y'all,
Okay.
one of you beautiful peoples. So I guess being more specific about that would be great. I don't know if any of you are kind of committed to being there. If you're not there, that would be an interesting then question, right? How does that then fit into what we're doing? I guess we would either skip it or I would look to the
Uh,
website.
you can do it, Rose. You can
Yes,
talk about what's new. I will be there. I just also don't not because I'm trying to avoid work, but I want to encourage more participation. So um I, that is what I'll say.
mm. I mean, Tim's really good at that kind of stuff. So I don't know if you're available. Oh, I think you said you had a conflict on this particular day and time.
I believe so. Think I have a recurring conflict, to be honest. I don't remember
Hmm.
which one it is.
Uh, I'm on pasting. Oh.
It's still on my calendar though, in case my recurring goes away.
Yeah, that's awesome. Also just curious, maybe we could have like one of these that we're looking at right now that you're kind of doing some edits on.
Mm-hmm.
And that could be, you know, regardless if you guys are there or not, just a couple little snippets of things that we want to kind of highlight and speak to in the WUG, you
Yeah.
know, and then I could do it.
You want to create a doc like that and share it
Yeah.
around, and we can collaborate on that. Okay.
Yeah.
I find
Right.
that's a good practice to do in community calls so folks can come back and take a look at it. They can also put in questions or comments, things like that. You can link the recording later if folks come upon the announcement and hop into the recording, those types of things.
Yep.
Since this is a recurring call, I would typically do it in one call doc for all of them. But you could also split up one per call since they, yeah, you know what, probably one per call would be better since they're separate.
Yeah, sure, kind of different topics. I think we did agree that it would be not recorded. Just kind of like in line
Okay.
with typical in-person type of WUGs where it's not recorded and people can be a little bit more
Yeah, that
comfortable
makes
to
sense.
share. Yeah.
For open. In terms of one doc versus multiple docs, I had resisted multiple docs in the past because then you can't search over things, but I have finally realized that the new tabbing feature here in docs ends up solving that problem. So I intend to do that for the future of this meeting, and that might work out well for that you can have one tab for the current meeting and then have more later, and then you can still search across all of them.
Okay, so it's one document, but multiple tabs.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Somewhere in here you can make a tab, and then once you have them, you get a little plus button here that you can make more tabs.
In
Okay.
CARC for the community calls, we typically do one call doc per call because they are so separate. And then it also allows you to alter the sharing from call to call.
Yeah,
Typically,
that's true
we
too.
will lock them down after the calls are done to read only and not allow community members to post publicly. So
Yeah,
that's just some
for
of the
a
lessons learned.
community-wide thing, that is probably the right thing to do.
For running sessions like this, we do running notes, which brings me to my pet peeve, which you can ignore, which is pages mode, please. Pages mode, please.
What is that? What are you saying?
But he went. I'll do this now. So
It gets rid of the page breaks, so you don't get orphan and widows.
there we go.
Oh.
It also flows differently on people's screens that have different sizes.
That
You can do it to your own taste.
So many things.
pet peeve addressed.
Thank you.
Oh,
All right.
one other thing is like the ability for people to add themselves. What are your guys' thoughts about that? I don't know how to solve that. I would like for them to add themselves, but I also, it kind of feels good that we have some kind of, you know, a space where they have to engage to get access. I don't know. What do you think?
For the WUG, definitely do it, allow editor access because you can always roll back and then you can clamp it down after the call.
Well, I think this
Um,
is people letting themselves into the invite in the first place, I think.
That.
Oh,
Right.
I'm 100% in favor of that.
You
Right,
want
but
to
also,
reduce
what if-
barriers to entry. Soon as somebody's got to wait for a click, I think the highest level folks would do would if you use a registration. Some Zoom forums allow registrations. The US RSC does that, so they'll hand out a registration and you capture the name, institution, a couple questions, make it really simple to get the Zoom link. So it's still only one click away.
Okay, so inside of Zoom, my Zoom account, there will be a way for people to then register themselves.
Yes, it depends on what it is and
Yeah, it
what your
depends.
Zoom license allows. But
Yeah.
there are Zoom accounts that allow it to do registration for a link as opposed to having it open.
Yeah.
We've
And
had
then you could
Sorry, go ahead.
you could then just pin that to the top of the general channel or the help channel or both or something like that.
Okay, I'm gonna have to look into that. Chris, I'll bug you later about that too. And I'll
Yeah. Have at it.
Awesome. Thank you.
And I have lots of opinions. You can ping me offline. I've been doing this for a while too. So
Awesome.
Awesome. Thanks, Sam.
So I was gonna ask this question here, but with Christian out, I'm gonna punt this to next time. There are some conversations about whether or not people from CIQ will attend ISC next year, and that got me thinking, hey, what if SUSE hosted a Werewolf BOF at ISC like we did with the Werewolf BOF at SC? But I will punt that to next time. Um, I'll figure out how to do that across tabs in the future. Um, then, so version 464 is like we whatever, we could release it when we want, but this is where we're sitting right now. Um, there are a few things in here and a few of them that I would like to get in. The two that I'm currently sitting on are no, so this is a follow-on from a pull request that Christian had submitted earlier, where because of the way that Golang considers the zero value of a Boolean to be equivalent to false, you can't determine or you can't distinguish between an unset Boolean and a false Boolean. So Christian's initial implementation of this uses a string-based type to have a string true and a string false and then an empty string. This alternative uses a Boolean pointer. I was hoping that Christian could review it, but I infer that he is out until maybe next week or maybe a week after that. So I don't know what people think about reviewing this in his absence and trying to merge it in. Um, I have added Tim to the reviewer, but what do people think?
I have not reviewed it yet, so
Yeah.
Fair enough. So
Yeah.
it seems reasonably clean to me, I admit, and am starting to champion that for the parts of it that use um, what is it? Reflection, which is we use reflection in order to derive the command line arguments from the model. There were some updates to that that I had struggled to do by hand that I used some Claude for, but it seems to be good and is passing all tests. So I will. Do you think you'll have time to review it this week or no?
I might, depending on how long it is.
Okay. It's a lot of
Um,
files, but a lot of the changes are like tiny little things. The
Yeah.
bulk of it is pretty small.
Since you sprung it on me, my initial thought was, would an approach of wrapping a bool in another type that is either, a type that is set or unset or set, and then it contains a child type, which is whatever type it is, and then that would be more generic.
I was imagining that just this morning, I think. I will say at least that a pointer to a Boolean is how this is done in some other places. It's kind of split between this and the dub bool, and I personally don't like the dub bool approach. But an explicit type that does it that way might be the right thing, but it would be a third way then.
I was gonna say,
Uh,
what's the typical uh implementation for Go? Because I see we're obviously not the only people who've hit this before.
I think that this is the way that it is typically done when you're reading YAML out.
Yeah.
That you just mark this as a pointer to a bool and then reading the YAML back out into this field behaves as you expect. If it's not set, then it's a nil pointer. If it's set, then it's true or false.
Okay.
I was going to say one more thing about this, but now I have forgotten. Oh well. Yeah, I think that is the main thing. Also, then we'd have to encode the serialization a bit more explicitly too, if we were doing it with an explicit type. But that's not that unusual either. Um, anyway, yeah, when you have a chance. And then the other thing that, oh yes,
Claude agrees with you. Number one is pointer to a bool. Number two is custom type with validity flag. So they're using a struct with a valid and not. So
yeah. Oh, now I remember what I was going to say. So that the lest it be just because I like or do not like things, that is the value judgment. The thing that I don't like about the dub bool uh, implementation is that then the values in the YAML are literally strings. It's a string true or a string false. They're quoted, and that changes like people's semantic experience with it. And certainly changing that between 463 and 464 I wanted to avoid. If we made that decision that all Booleans were now going to be strings, that could be acceptable, but I didn't want to have the type change in the YAML between 463 and 464. That is the primary motivator for me wanting to do it with a Boolean pointer versus a string. So from that, the other thing, which is I think less controversial, is that there is a set of either existing PRs, we had one from an engineer at CIQ here, or issues that had been submitted about relatively minor problems with two of them are network manager and one of them is ifconfig. One is about network bonds. We nominally supported configuring network bonds, but then we did not set slave equals yes, which I remember when I did this that I just assumed that that was unnecessary because why wouldn't it be if you have a network master? And apparently it is actually necessary. So or I don't know, maybe it works in some circumstances and not others. I'm pretty sure I tested it, but maybe I only tested it on network manager and not ifconfig. In any case, they pointed out that it was missing. The docs, in fact, do say that it should be there, so I've just added it in. This one here is that, so in network manager, the IP interface, like the IP configuration can be in state disabled or manual or auto if you're doing auto, but we don't. And if you have state set to manual, but do not set an IP address or a route on that interface, then Network Manager blows up and complains. So this change sets it to disabled if neither of those are true. And this was a user issue submitted because they wanted to have an interface that they then configured a VLAN on. And so the address on the VLAN interface and the primary interface doesn't have an address, but then it was blowing up because it was configured to manual. And then the last thing here was not actually causing an issue, but we were configuring an Ethernet section even for InfiniBand type interfaces, and it's mostly just noise and a distraction. But this reviews that, or it does not emit an Ethernet section if it is not an Ethernet interface now. So this is still marked draft because I'm testing it in, like, I'm actually booting up some nodes with it and making sure it all works, but it's all passing tests and whatnot. And once that is done, I'll mark that ready for review and try and get someone to look at it. But aside from those, and so that is this and this and this and this and this. Oh, and this. So that leaves 6 issues or PRs that are remaining in the release. Are there things in there that we should delay a release in order to get out or to include? What is release blocker?
So the system D one, it's not a blocker. It's just a simple one for changing the default to DNS mask. It's more of a policy thing. I'm using
It is
that
at
in
least a PR already, so
Yeah,
I think that's
it's
reasonable to include.
yeah, it's more of a policy thing. I've applied that patch upstream to OpenHPC, so it can stay there if it doesn't go here, or I can remove that patch and we can apply it if that's where we want to go in terms of DNS mask for just for EL10 or greater.
Well, I think this doesn't really apply to like this.
Oh,
This is
sorry,
unrelated to DNS mask.
that's sorry, I misrepresented that. That
So the
PR.
issue here is we've recently added the ability for Werewolf Control Configure to restart Werewolf D, and so it does that now when you say Werewolf Control Configure all, but only if you have specified a system D name to tell it what service to restart, and it does not assume that it is called Werewolf D. And as I noted down here, I feel like I did that on purpose, but I don't remember why. And so it seems like it should be fine to merge, but I wanted to just check my memory and see if I could remember why I did not do that in the first place. But that should be fine.
And that will solve a long-standing mystery. There were some cases where I'd have to restart Werewolf D manually to get things changed, and that answers that question. So now I know I can just have to do www control and configure, and it'll do it.
I think I had, oh, yeah, I'll look at it again. If that's not already assigned to me, I will do so, and I will, yeah, I'll assign that to myself and review that. Oh, and I wanted to try and get this one in mostly as a good neighbor thing for doing right by our OpenHPC friends, since Adrian took the time to put this in. So I'm already assigned to that one, so I'll try and get that in. I feel like 824 is fine to push out, as it, and 1979 and 1978. 1978 I'd like to get done sooner than later, but I don't think it's worth blocking the release on. Tim, tell us about this one here.
Oh, the Golang version is 116 in the spec file, and I don't think it'll actually build against 116.
Yeah.
So that should be resolved. And that's, again, more of a policy one, determining what we're going to set the lowest value to.
I think I just didn't know that this was in the spec file. We should change that to 1.22 because that's what we test against. And
Okay.
I think that's fine. I was imagining this value only existing. Here, I'll assign this to me. And I was imagining this only existing in the GitHub. So
No,
yeah,
it's in the spec file.
yeah, that's great. We can and should fix that. So that means I'm gonna push these out to 46x and consider what remains the release and try and get that out this week.
Well, I'm thinking about it for the SSH key types. I believe DSA will break things in Enterprise Linux 10. So while you're in that space, you may want to consider testing against that.
Okay. You mean having them at all? Like you can't generate DSA key types on 10? Is that what you're saying?
Something like that. It's recorded in a PR somewhere. It bit me. So that's a manual thing we're using in OpenHPC to
I
fix
remember
up.
seeing you doing something with DSA keys in the EL10 PR. So that sounds right to me. You should be able to do it like you saw. We were just having issues where if you generate the file, but it is an empty file like you have a host that accepts an RSA key, SSH is going to look for an RSA host key. If you put a file there but don't have a key in it, which is what Warewulf is doing, then SSH blows up. And so that should be a relatively small fix, but it's also a corner case. Cool. This is just a quick like, hey, you might be interested. This is kind of cool going on the CIQ side, and people here might already know Cedric. He's an engineer here with CIQ. He was working on Aptainer and Singularity before. He's working on Warewulf kind of internally right now, and because he is a consummate engineer, he wants to have full stack integration testing working, and he is working on that, but based on I think Vagrant. trying to get Vagrant working again. And because he doesn't want multi-gigabyte OS images, he has also gotten it booting Alpine, which I thought people here would be interested to know. I didn't know enough about Alpine to even know that there were kernel packages for Alpine. But yeah, I look forward to seeing that as part of maybe some, maybe not automated, but like host runnable integration tests to do full stack dev development and things. So wanted to let people know. Maybe we can get him to come to one of these in the future and show off what he's working on. And that brings us to you. Tell us about OpenHPC 4.
Yeah, we got a minimum viable product for Enterprise Linux 10 or Rocky 10, Warewulf 4, which is a complete rebuild and Slurm. So it's working with some hacks just to make it work because there's a lot of packages that need to be updated and in OpenHPC. That patch I was talking to you about in terms of the Warewulf going to DNS mask, and the patches to add DNS mask is in there. Along those lines, we're going to be using YQ, and it should be hitting Apple soon. So
Awesome.
it's
Who's going to be the maintainer for that?
I
that
don't
you?
know. No, I'm not. It's done by somebody else.
Okay.
I am not a Red Hat spec file builder by any means. So if it'd be anyone, it'd be Adrian.
Okay.
But it did bring up an interesting thing. So one thing in DNS mask, for those of you who don't know, you need to specify an interface out of the box. It uses localhost as interface, which is wise on their part. So you don't want to be advertising DHCP to everyone's network. Bad things happen. However, that means we need to modify it. So one route would be just add a wildcard character to the interfaces. I forget exactly how to do it, but you can have it listen on all the interfaces. It will do the right thing. It won't broadcast DHCP to the other interfaces. However, that scares me a little bit. So one thing to do would be to, in the template, take the interface of the provisioning interface and put that in a template and use that there. So the question is which approach is appropriate, and if the interface one is appropriate, is that a tag we can access? I didn't get a chance to look at it before then.
So what the existing DHCPD template does is roughly equivalent to it will listen on all interfaces, but then it only like by virtue of the way DHCPD works, it then turns off the interfaces uh that don't have configuration. So if
Yeah.
there's nothing configured for a given interface, it just stops working on that one. I'm with you. I'm a little afraid of that. But
Well, it also might expose DNS and some other things. So if we were to go that route, we would need to test a lot to make sure that it's quote unquote safe.
I think the way that the DNS mask template is made right now was under the expectation that it might be trying to integrate into an existing DNS mask config that Warewulf does not own entirely, which is why Warewulf is only putting a minimal amount in DNSMask.d rather than trying to write the entire DNS mask config file.
And that's a reasonable approach as well. And in that case, then the echo statement there would be we're the owners of it, and it works out of the box just fine for that. So that interface, the SMS ETH internal variable is used multiple places within OpenHPC. So that's not a new requirement.
If we had like let's imagine that we could generate that interface equals the correct interface into www4 interface.conf as part of the www.ctl configure DHCP. If it were also specified elsewhere in the DNS mask config, does it break, or is it okay for it to be redundant?
If I remember correctly, it's the last one set might work.
Okay.
So you could give it a low number. I would need to test that, but
it makes me think it would be good if we could just set that value in the template, as long as it doesn't break other things that the server might be trying to do outside of this config.
Yeah, and they also, in terms of the Warewulf documentation, it will need something similar to this for it to work as well.
Yeah.
So I thought I'd just bring it up for general discussion. We don't have to decide today. That approach in OpenHPC, and I would imagine in Warewulf the docs as well, would be simple enough for folks to do, and they should understand what they're doing. So it might be a little bit of CYA in terms of, well, you specified it wrong.
Unless there's other, and maybe I was thinking rather than listening, and I apologize, but unless there is objection, I think adding this line to the template makes sense. Yeah.
I would tend to make it a separate template file.
A separate template file from this.
No, for that one, the WW4 interface, that's separate from the one that's set by the template. That it sets it to WW4 hosts is the name of the file.
I see. Oh, yeah. Okay, that makes sense to me also.
You can just drop that
see.
file out, and it's obvious what that does, and you can make it a very low priority.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then your second question here, I think I understand the context of this is because we tell DNSMask to look in varlib tftp boot, but that is typically created by the tftpd package or TFTP server or whatever.
Correct.
Which is not then necessarily in place when you are using DNSMask. When we do configure TFTP, does it create this? It just doesn't have the context?
Yes, it configure TFTP, you mean?
So if you do wwctl configure TFTP,
yes,
that's what copies files into this. I would expect it to then create varlib TFTP boot. We're just not doing a restore con on it.
Yeah, and the issue showed up in OpenHPC is because it expects it to be there. So it did some symlink shenanigans in SRV folder. And so you can't make a directory on top of a symlink. And so it blew up. So that could be fixed on our side. But that's what made me think of that this needs to be addressed. And regardless, the restore con needs to be done. When the TFTP server was created, then it would do the proper SE Linux attributes on there. So yeah, I guess one option would be in the configure part of it to do the restore con, and I think that would probably be the most reliable in my guess. However, there seems to be some newer other types of SE Linux adjacent type stuff as well that I'm no longer familiar with or not yet familiar with. So
is there a better place that we could be writing into besides varlib tftp boot that would have the right context already and we wouldn't have to worry about it? Because this here, I'm not worried about this. I could just say we should do a restore con on anything that configure places, and then that's fine. This here worries me though. And I would rather find a place that has the right context already to put the files.
What are we talking about, the spec file?
No.
Specifically? Okay.
Well, I mean, in theory, we could do it there, but I'm thinking of this as something that configure would do.
Yeah, I'm only saying this because when you're dealing with spec files, you never should see /var. It should always be using a state directory macro. Right? Because every operating system that you write to the state directory, it might be varlib, it might be served, depending on which
Sure, I think we should presume that if this were in a place that would use like templatized macros, it would be converted to that. But yeah, it's just
this is my example from the instructions to fix it without putting it in the spec file. So I thought I'd give that for context as opposed to doing the spec file. Sorry to interrupt.
Should we just put it somewhere under the root for somewhere in like the Warewulf root? like under
Oh.
Werewolf, then we can set context in it and it shouldn't impact anything else.
We could set it in the spec file then. Yeah, then it could be like in var lib werewolf provision tftp or something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah. I don't know that. Yeah, we could set the SE Linux context to public content t then.
That would be internally consistent as well. Sorry about the.
Yeah. Who was that? Was that Ian or was that Shane?
It was Shane.
Shane. Okay. Now I'm writing. Who was that? Uh. So I think either of those are suitable. And Tim, I'd be interested. I know you won't know right now, or I presume you won't know right now, but I'd be interested uh in your thoughts on which of these is better or more preferred, especially from the OpenHPC perspective.
Right. And from that, I said the viewpoint again, varlib, you're saying varlib werewolf, you're saying state directory werewolf, right? Because if you move to SUSE, it's serve.
Yeah, this is templatized in the spec file, in the Warewulf spec file. It's just, what I colloquially think of as varlib werewolf.
That we did hit an issue, and I remember the OpenHPC had an issue because we have always based OpenHPC off the SUSE side in terms of where we store stuff. So all the Warewulf stuff always ended up under serve.
Sure. I think I would actually prefer it to be in serve. It's just, that's a big change to make.
Yeah. But I totally also know where Tim's coming from, because they had to put a link in because something along the lines got broken because Red Hat wasn't happy with things being in serve.
So Tim, do you have what you need to kind of form an opinion from here? Or
yeah, I think so. Okay. Nothing's critical or blocking in terms of OpenHPC, and there's nothing that concerns me personally. I think I have been mulling it over a little bit just because I was thinking of solutions. I think putting the restore con in the configure statement, I think, would be the most consistent way of doing it, given what Warewulf does and the annoyance of having multiple TFTP servers. That's kind of where I'm thinking. And I think it also would be consistent to store in varlib or state-dir Warewulf, just because we're serving other things out of there.
Okay. And that's, that can be done. Well, the restore con will need to be a code change, but the, where it gets written is ultimately just a configuration issue.
Yeah.
So that should be fine.
And if somebody sets it in the YAML, correct me if I'm wrong, then it should just do the right thing to wherever the system has their their TFTP directory.
Yes. So if you set the TFTP directory in werewulf.conf, it should both write things there, and then when you generate a DHCP config, it should pull it from there.
Yeah. Assuming that the SE Linux stuff is properly set up. But they should have done that prior because they're moving it there, and theoretically, they've already got it working and serving TFTP files.
Yes. Cool. Can you make issues for these things that require code changes at least, and if there's anything else that you'd like to be changed in the default config as well?
Yes, I can do that.
Okay, awesome. Well, that brings us to the end of our agenda. Anything else we need to? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I want to loop back on one quick question. Is there a reason we have to use Golang 22 versus Golang 21? I can't remember if we did that discussion.
So it's every time we've bumped the Golang up, it
Yeah.
has been because, well, typically it has been because a dependabot told us to upgrade a dependency, and doing so pulled in a new Golang version.
Okay. The reason I'm
Uh,
asking all of this is because OpenEuler's latest is 21, and I really would like us to be able to move OpenHPC 4 to use Warewulf with OpenEuler, and
yes.
that's going to become a block, and I don't want to have to distribute a whole new version of Golang.
Well, so I think the correct way to ensure that is we need to get OpenEuler into the CI/CD, because it is specifically when we break the CI/CD that we notice, oh, we can't do that.
Okay.
So if you could create an issue for that, and then we can try and get that in for 465, I think.
Okay.
And we talked about this last time too. I think I am 100% in support of maintaining a Golang version that is compatible with the OHPC version of OpenEuler.
Okay.
It's just we hadn't been following it, so
Okay.
we should start doing that. And because we've had that for Rocky and SUSE, like that has been what it is. We don't upgrade Go if it would break Rocky or SUSE. And we'll just add OpenEuler to that list because OpenHPC has.
And
Okay.
I think the latest service pack of OpenEuler actually goes to .24. I'm not sure about that when I looked at it. So
That's why I just popped on. It's the latest service pack for the 2403, the long-term version. Unless we've bumped it, unless I am mistaken, is OpenHPC 4 using OpenEuler 25?
I have no idea.
Okay. I will double check, but it looks like they keep the same subversion. They just bump the build number in the service pack. But I will double check. But Jonathan, I'll put an issue in there to get OpenEuler added to the support list.
Great. Yeah, that sounds great. Anything else we need to discuss before we go? Awesome. Well, thanks everyone. We're ending on time for once, and yeah, excited to get this next release out and plugging away. Thanks for all your help.
Right.
See y'all
Thank
later.
you.